Officers of the Imperial Navy, I am Grand Admiral Thrawn. I have been instructed by Fleet Command to share some of my tactical knowledge and skills that you may not have been exposed to in the Academy, which have proved successful over the past several years. These tactics will help in the fight against the growing rebellion, but also, perhaps, in the future, aid you in a fight against a much larger or more menacing adversary that lies in the reaches beyond the Empire. Now then, let us begin. There are 3 types of tacticians. A great tactician creates plans. A good tactician recognizes the soundness of a plan presented on them. A fair tactician must see the plan succeed before offering any approval. Those with no tactical ability at all may never understand or accept it. To be a great tactician, one must master 2 seemingly related, but in practice, much different skills. The first skill is obvious. Being able to create and execute on tactics, both on paper and in the field, is essential. This skill can be taught in the classroom or learned and refined in practice. Most commanders of the Imperial Navy possess this skill to some capacity, and that makes them fair or even good tacticians. But what separates those from truly great tacticians is the ability to not only create your own tactics, but to predict your adversary's tactics and actions before they occur. Such is the second skill a tactician must master, and is the skill most fail to obtain. One must look well beyond the battlefield and into one's adversary's culture to fully understand how they will react. But we will discuss that later. Let us begin with a discussion of tactics. Please direct your attention to the desk in front of me. To aid in our discussion and tactics formulation, I have brought several indicators, as you can see on the table. The white indicators are for the Empire, and the blue are for any adversary, be it rebels or otherwise. I have labeled Imperial Navy ships with a triangle for Imperial or Victory class Star Destroyers, and an H for a squadron of fighters, and an O for Interdictor Star Destroyers. If you need a refresher from the Academy, Interdictor class Star Destroyers are capable of generating an interdiction field that prevents hyperspace travel in their vicinity. For the enemy forces, I've labeled large or capital ships similar to that of a Star Destroyer with an oval, and enemy fighters with an X. Let us begin. The most efficient way to dispatch an enemy is with overwhelming concentrated firepower on small sections of an enemy force, perhaps even on a singular ship. When the ship has been disabled, the fleet at large can coordinate its attack on the next target, as dictated by the commanding officer. Such an attack requires a high level of communication and trust between officers. Let us take, for example, 2 opposing lines. Fighters may be deployed and rush the enemy lines. But firepower should be concentrated on one ship at a time. That way, when the ship is disabled, the enemy line has reduced firepower. Oftentimes, the best defensive tactics are swift offensive maneuvers so that the enemy cannot damage you effectively. Also be aware if the enemy is deploying this tactic. As the commanding officer, monitor the status of each Star Destroyer in your fleet and be ready to draw the targeted vessel back, send ships to intercept the firepower, or a combination of the two. Two tactics that the rebels have been known to use on the battlefield are the slash and the fake. These tactics are greatly flawed if the opponent can recognize them, and as such, I will show you here how to counter. In a slash attack, the enemy force will attempt to drive a line of ships through the opposing side's formation. Allow me to position the indicators. As you can see, the primary advantage that the rebels or a similar adversary would gain is cutting the Imperial line in two and preventing the Star Destroyers from unleashing a full barrage due to the risk of crossfire and missed shots causing friendly fire. The counter to this tactic is obvious. First, the formation of a slash is easy to spot for a perceptive commander, as the enemy ships will begin forming a line. Often, the rebel commander will wait for the last moment to form the line, with all the ships nearly in position, so look for telltale signs. Upon recognizing the slash attack is imminent, immediately bring all ships forward and up in a fan. The table is not three-dimensional, but would also bring the ships physically up off the table. Now, that frees up two quadrants, down and below the Imperial line, and allowing the Star Destroyers to continue their full barrage with the rebel forces now poorly positioned. The second tactic, the fake attack, occurs when the rebel commander attempts to break the Imperial line preemptively. Again, allow me to position the indicators. As you can see, the Imperial and Rebel forces are engaged in combat in two lines, and the Rebel ships will begin to charge the Imperial line. The Rebel commander is intending to fake a brawl, or a disorganized fight. When the Star Destroyers break formation, the rebel ships turn hard to bring their broadsides to bear and attack the out-of-position ships. The counter to this attack is to remain in formation unleash a full barrage on the approaching ships, one at a time, and engage reverse thrusters. This will allow more time to destroy the rebel ships as they approach. Under no circumstances break formation unless the rebel ships fully reach the Imperial line. Rebels often implement hit-and-run style raids on fleets to deal maximum damage and flee before retaliation can occur. The best defense against this attack is the Interdictor class Star Destroyer, to remove the possibility for escape and thus discourage the pilots from even beginning the raid. However, such ships are not always available or in all fleets. The best defense otherwise is to keep turbo lasers on standby while in combat active sectors of the galaxy and keep crew alert at all times. When the rebel bombers do attack, do not launch fighters. Keep them on standby with the pilots ready to deploy at a moment's notice. The bombers will no doubt flee before the TIE fighters are fully operational, and if the raid is a preliminary strike to a larger attack, then having fighters out of position from the start can be deadly. Now, you may encounter battles in which you are facing overwhelming odds against you. In these scenarios, it is often necessary to implement tactics that utilize preemptive strikes or deception. One such example I will present here. If you are facing a group of adversaries of much greater firepower and have not yet made it within combat range, you can deploy TIE fighters and bombers and have them powered down prior to leaving the hangar bay so that they may coast out. Then, using the tractor beam of the Star Destroyer, you may propel the fighters past the bow of the ship towards the enemy. They will be unlikely to spot the small fighters when they are powered down, and when they arrive, the fighters can unleash a devastating first strike against the adversary before they are able to respond. Another such example is using the Interdictor class Star Destroyer on your own forces. As I'm sure you all know, jumping out of hyperspace is often inaccurate, and ships cannot position themselves effectively while emerging from hyperspace. An interdictor, however, can generate a precise interdiction field and pull vessels out of hyperspace wherever the commander chooses. A relatively small Imperial force can engage a rebel fleet, causing the commander to be passive and error-prone. When the time is right, a larger Imperial force waiting nearby outside of center range can jump into hyperspace and then emerge in the precise right location. Surprising the enemy force and launching a devastating strike. That tactic I have used many times to great success against the rebel forces. Again, in any case, do not underestimate the effectiveness of a preemptive strike. If you are certain the opponent is hostile and intends to harm, striking first may be the difference between life and death. Now then, the second part of being a great tactician, predicting your adversary's tactics. Some may question my ways, but I find it most valuable to study your opponent's culture and art, for that will inform you of how they will act and react in battle. Learning the skill, however, is not trivial. I suggest that you begin with introspection. Study the empire itself, its artwork, and main cultural values and themes. Then compare the tactics taught and employed on the battlefield and its standing orders for commanders. Also, study your own personal values and what art you value, and how that differs from your fellow commanders. Then, compare tactical differences. Being self-aware is a key part of being a better tactician and commander, and also beginning the path of predicting your adversary's actions. But unfortunately, that is all the time we have today. We will reconvene again in 4 days for a follow-up session. This is not mandatory if you have orders to fulfill, but if you are able, we will discuss more tactics, and I will provide further explanation to understanding the art and culture of the Empire and of the rebels. Thank you for your time, and my warrior's fortune smile upon you.